What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. We're going to put it all together today, all the lessons from the last couple weeks and stuff like that. Basically, music evolution, using our minds to target our solos and sync up the soloing ideas with the chord progression, how to develop the chord progression from scratch using modal interchange. It's all in there. We're going to talk about the broad strokes. And of course, next week, we're going to start into a mini course where I show you the entire process, how to write them, the VST instruments you can use, recording them to a large degree, and then basically producing it, and then how that could become incredibly useful and relevant to you in the future. That's why I'm doing that, because it's going to be a great opportunity for people that want to do the music thing, but may not be good enough to tour or whatever it is, but still want to get their stuff out there. This is a great way to engage with your audience. And of course, you can do now custom concerts on the internet by coming up with these prefabbed backing tracks. But step number one, being able to come up with an interesting backing track in the first place, and it doesn't just revolve around the kind of, ubiquity that you get on the internet right now, which is quite a bit of it. Okay, so we're going to take a bit of a different direction here, and then we're going to go through all the broad strokes. Mint, let's do it. All right, we're going to break these down into the four phrases. The first one is obviously an F major chord moving to F minor. That's one of the oldest chord progressions in the book. Radiohead, the Beatles, Smashing Pumpkins, the list is endless. Essentially, it's one of those ones that needs to be in your repertoire where you see the fourth degree and you're like, oh, look, I can build a minor triad off the fourth degree, and it sounds just as awesome in a diatonic scale sequence, meaning you can either see the fourth degree of a major scale as a major chord or a minor chord. I know, shocker, you see me do that. And then, of course, I extend the idea out. Instead of doing a major triad, I do a major 7, and I do a minor 7 instead of just a minor triad. And then I take it one step further with the evolution to be like, let's group them into clusters. So initially I do 1, 3, 5, the root inversion. But then I'm like, to get the sort of implied flavor of the major 7 or minor 7, I'll add the third at the top, which now gives me 1, 5, 7. Or 1, 5, flat 7, depending on which one you're doing, right? So that's very, very important. So all together there, you have number one, the idea that you're going to start our chord on the fourth degree, and then all of a sudden you have this option to either flip-flop between major and minor, or use that as a cadence. 4-1 is obviously going to be great too, or jump off again to do 4-6 is going to be another great one. So just because a lot of the same notes in the 6 chord also belong to the 4 chord. Okay, so you start to see this little bit of music logic here. It's not actually magic. I'm just like, if I jump up a third, obviously from the chord that I'm starting on, that chord's going to be very sympathetic. Same thing if I jump back a third. So if I'm playing F, well, D is going to be very sympathetic to it, and A is going to be very sympathetic to it. So those 2 chords are great places to go after the fact, right? Or I can borrow from the modal interchange stuff, where I borrow from the parallel key to get F minor. So there's 2 ideas. Immediately go from F major to A minor, or F major to D minor, or go from F major to F minor. Nails it, which is what I did. For the solos, essentially, I see the F major as the Ionian position, first fret. So I jump up to the A, that major third interval there, and basically play the first inversion, and then I just kick it up to the major 7. No big deal. That also sets me up perfectly to now do the first inversion minor 7 at A flat, which is going to correspond with the F minor. When I see F minor like that at the first fret now, I see that as the Aeolian position. It's no longer the Ionian position. When it's major, I see it as Ionian at the first fret. When it's minor, I see it as Aeolian at the first fret now, which now means I got to jump up the minor third and play the first inversion, which is technically in the Ionian position. I know your brain is just melting right now. And when I did that, of course, it allows me to sneak down that half step into the Locrian position relative to that A flat, G in this case, and then play the 5 chord relative to A flat Okay, so that lets me do basically a kind of fake little 5-1 cadence. In this case, the 1, instead of being a major triad or the major 7, is now a minor 7 inversion, and then I move to the 5 chord in the Locrian position to create the cadence. Okay, done deal. So listen to the example, and you'll hear me basically play a major arpeggio or a major 7 in the first inversion. Then you'll hear me move to a minor 7 arpeggio in the first inversion, and then I slip down from that position, which is I'm considering to be the Ionian position, just moving down the half step to get to the Locrian position, and I play another first inversion major. No big deal, but you can see the effect is pretty awesome. Let's do it. All right, in the second phrase here, we're getting deeper into modal interchange. So we left off with the F minor chord. I'm like, what's going to sound best after that? Oh, wow, shocker, B flat major. B flat major leads perfectly into A flat major. You can see that as the 4 and 5 chord of which scale? I'll let you figure it out. Put it in the comments below if you know. From there, I'm like, okay, listen, I'm starting to get off the beaten path here. So I need to get back into the diatonic key, C major. So from the A flat major, I'm like, why not do this second inversion of the D minor 7 chord? I'm going to throw some other stuff in there, but then I was just like, nah. Right, from there, obviously, that sets up a nice cadence for me to go to C major, add 9. In this case, I'm playing 1, 2, 3, and 5, but I'm starting basically in the second inversion. So it's 5, 1, 2, 3. I know, shocker. So that's really the second section there, and it just goes to show you can kind of, you know, get into the weeds with respect to some of these chord progressions, and that's really the training platform is to play a couple of the weird ones and then try to find a chord back in the diatonic key to sort of bring you back to reality, and then just, again, close it out, in this case, from the D minor to the C major, add 9. Okay, very important to sort of hear these little closing statements. You hear them all the time in classical music. I picked this up, obviously, from playing hundreds of classical songs, even the little sort of more simplistic ones, where I was doing it with respect to sight reading. I'm like, they're always doing this stuff, and it just sort of sits with you, and then you start doing it, and of course, it's one of those music principles that's absolutely essential for your music to sound right or normal, if you will. You know, then you can branch off and get as weird as you want, but you gotta learn to walk the path first before you decide to go off on your own adventure. As far as the leads are concerned, no big deal. Over the B flat major, I'm like, why not do B flat 7? You know, just add a bit of extra spiciness in there. Remember, you can substitute any dominant 7 chord for a major triad. So that's done. And then I was like, oh, look, I can jump up here with respect to the A flat here and do this minor 7 inversion at the Phrygian position. Okay, now listen, those two arpeggios just sounded particularly good together, so I threw them together. That's why I used that inversion. I could have used a different one, but I used that one because it worked well with that root inversion of the B flat 7. It also was very close to the third inversion of the D minor 7 that I played. I know, shocker, coming from the Mixolydian position. And last but not least, of course, that sets me up perfectly to play C major triad, basically superimposed right over top of it. Now you're noticing with the arpeggios there, not only am I looking for synergy to go from one to the next, but then near the end there, I'm trying to find ways to keep them as closely packed together as humanly possible, right, as the frets will allow me, which is why you see me barely moving at all there. And that's on purpose. it creates this cool sort of effect. Now, there's going to be a tendency for you to want to move around, but that's where the inversions come into play. And you can just basically look for the inversion that's closest so that you can play it. And then you're like, oh, look, one little move here and I'm right back into where I need to go. And again, notice as the final arpeggio, I don't play C major 7. I do a C major triad in groups of 3 because, again, brings the music to a close. So that's the second phrase. I kind of choked through that one, but I'm feeling a little rusty today. You know how it is. Let's get into the third phrase. All right, I thought we could change it up. I had my fill of the arpeggios, if you will. Plus, this is a great opportunity to start to factor in some sort of minor pentatonic theory, if you will. So the chords are basically E minor to A minor. Now, those should be a no-brainer. Essentially, you're talking about the key of C major, and E minor basically shares a ton of notes with C major, both E minor 7 and C major 7, obviously. But also, A minor is the relative minor of C major. So E minor and A minor are going to synergize really well when I want to head back eventually to C major and close my idea out again, right? So I'm trying to look for various ways of changing it up. Initially, I go with the 4 chord to a 4 minor chord, right? That lets me go to the sort of borrowed chords from the modal interchange, in this case the flat 7 and the flat 6 as far as major chords are concerned, which allows me to jump up to the 2 chord and then end on the 1 chord. And now, of course, I'm getting into the 3 chord and the 6 chord. Again, you can see how there's like these various relationships. I'm always trying to tie things back so I can get back to C major, home base. And I want 3 different ways of doing that. The plagal cadence at the beginning, 4-1. And even the 4 as a minor chord going to 1 is going to sound pretty badass too. Just saying. For the next one there, you see a bit more involved of a chord progression, right? From the flat 7 to the flat 6. Moving into, obviously, the 2 chord into the 1 chord. And now, last but not least, you've got the 3 chord moving to the 6 chord, which is going to, create the sort of setup, if you will, for the 4th phrase, where I'm going to just descend down using a very simple sort of chord progression, going from 6 to 5 to 4 to 1. Well, I do 3 in there too, but then ultimately to 1, right? So very important. And this, of course, opens the door for some minor pentatonic theory. So when I'm doing the first one, I'm like, oh, look, E minor, that's G major, so I might as well do E minor pentatonic. So you can see me do that, basically using the whole step sequence. I know, shocker. And once I get to the top there, of course, the chord moves to the A minor. Well, now I'm thinking about it as far as C major, so that means I can do the D Dorian pentatonic right there from where I left off. Okay, again, notice when the chord changed, I sort of looked for something that was going to be built off the same note that I was still on, if you will, right? From the previous idea, so I could tie those 2 things together with this common note. And then all I did was a group of 4 coming down. And then back to the E minor. Of course, I ascend using the whole step sequence until I get to the Phrygian position. Then I jump up, of course, to Aeolian. I do a major 7 arpeggio there, no big deal. G major 7, of course, to complement the E minor sort of backing track. And then when I get to the A minor again, in this case, I jump up to the Aeolian position, if you will, with respect to G major, and then I just play the Phrygian pentatonic over top of it. Now, this is another weird one. You can sort of see it as the G major, E minor, sort of minor pentatonic. You could also see it as A minor and B minor pentatonic, which is going to give you all three of those scale shapes layering up over the 12th fret. So you could done either the minor pentatonic in the Aeolian position, the Phrygian one, or Dorian. So you get to see it, depending on how your mindset works. I know that that's a lot for a lot of people to take in there, what I just said, but that's just it. You see, when I move to this one position, I'm like, oh, look, that's the Dorian pentatonic based around this C major here. But then when I moved up to the next one, I was just like, I can either see it as the Aeolian position of G major, in this case, E minor, where I have all these pentatonics stacked on top of each other, or I can see it as, yes, B minor, and just climbing up to the Phrygian position. So again, the way you think about it is going to kind of dictate how you approach it. And it honestly, there is no one that's better than the other. And you should probably think about them in both ways, because you never know when you're going to need one versus the other, because it makes more sense in whatever it is that you're doing. Again, critical thinking skills here. Basically, I have G major, which produces E minor. And then I also know that I can play minor pentatonics on the 6th degree, the 2nd degree, and the 3rd degree of the key I'm working in, which is now going to give me A minor and B minor. And then I can just layer those over top of each other. Done deal. I know. So that was probably a lot. Listen to the example. Again, you'll just hear me sort of tie these two pentatonic ideas together, which is a great way. And again, notice how I'm thinking, oh, the A minor chord. Do I play A minor pentatonic? No. I go to the C major and then, of course, jump up to its 2nd degree, D Dorian. Nails it, right? And it's the same sort of idea when I jump up again with respect to the E minor stuff leading into the Phrygian position now with respect to B minor pentatonic. So very useful tool there to practice and train your mind to see things shifted from the actual position where you're most comfortable, the minor pentatonic, and be like, oh, look, there's the Dorian position, there's Phrygian, there's Mixolydian. You should be able to be like, there it is, boom, just move to it instantly. Based on, you're like, oh, I want to see this as B minor pentatonic, the Aeolian position. I've got to move up here to the Dorian. That means I got to move up a minor third and then jump up another whole step. Seeing it in your mind means you can do it on the fretboard. Nails it. Get on the exercise and let's do this 4th phrase. All right, in the last section here, again, I'm just climbing down from the A minor chord to G major to F major to E minor to C major, right? That's, again, a chord progression that literally goes back hundreds of years and been used a million times. But it's essential to, building up the, your music radar, I want to say, compass, if you will. So you're like, oh, look, there's the 6th degree, moving to the 5th degree, moving to the 4th degree. It's moving to the 3rd. You'll start to hear these progressions, and then you'll hear a song randomly. You're like, there's 6 to 5 to 4. And there it is. Okay, it's important that you play them like this so that you can start recognizing these sounds. And when you do, then, of course, you can start layering the solos on top of it. As far as the solo is concerned, in this case, I didn't get too crazy because I wanted to stress the importance of this sort of one technique. You'll see I just do it on one string, the B. And I'm just playing the diatonic scale. Probably C major, but it doesn't really matter. You could do a whole bunch of different ones. My point being here is I'm using vibrato and slides and practicing rakes and bends. Not enough people do things like this just on one string or whatever it is and really make an entire phrase out of just playing some very simple stuff, but really trying to nail these bends and the slides and all the rest of that stuff. Can you get the Vi slide? You know what I mean? Can you get the, you know, the Satriani chirp with the bar and stuff like that, or the Van Halen dive bomb. They're all relevant. And a lot of them come from just one string. And so you have to sort of practice a mindset to be like, I got to get good at just doing stuff on one string. And a lot of that comes from like this ability to slide and do vibrato and bends and all the rest of that good stuff. Just another great way to practice these essential skills in the context of music, in a soloing or improvisation sort of situation, and then actually get some real world practice, because there's some groove involved, obviously timing, and just feel, right? And that's why I added that in. I could have done something more complex, of course, but the point being here is that's just as important as any of the arpeggio sequences, and almost anybody can do what I did there with a bit of practice. And do practice it. It takes years to really get a firm grasp of some of those little micro techniques, like the slides and bends, bending up perfectly to a note and adding vibrato or doing a double bend or whatever you want to call it. That stuff, to really fine tune your ear to get it perfectly, especially on the half ones, like the half step bends. That's actually a lot trickier than you think. Okay, and making them sound good and selling it in the context of a solo, also quite tricky. So practice them often. There it is. That's the video. Plus, of course, at the end here, you'll see me do another little version of it. But we're going to get into the writing of the song. We're going to go through the modal interchange stuff, borrowing the chords and all the rest of that stuff. We're going to talk about using the solos and the little tips and tricks and techniques I use to basically like, oh, go here to play the first inversion, or jump here to do the second, or do this or do that. I'll show you the practical application on the actual fretboard with diagrams. I absolutely will. But initially you have to start to think like this. I got to remember the position I'm playing in. I have to remember it relative to what I'm doing. I have to actually make some sort of decision also to be like, what scale am I playing in? What position am I in? What am I doing? 3 notes per string? Am I using arpeggios? What? Okay, all of those things most people don't do, which is why they have a massive amount of difficulty getting on this train, because they're just not mentally trained to be like, you have to do these extra steps first before you can really sell the solo and all the rest of that stuff. Okay, so start getting on this idea of when you're playing and stuff like that, identify the chord. If you can see it on the screen and stuff and it says B flat 7, then do something relative to B flat 7, like B7 arpeggio in one of its inversions, like B flat mixolydian as a scale, as one of the harmonic minor or melodic minor equivalents is another one. Obviously, that's getting a little further up the food chain, but still. Or a sympathetic scale that can be played in conjunction with it, or one of the blues scales, a pentatonic idea. So you're starting to get the impression here. You're going to look at the chord, identify it, and then be like, I should do this based on this. You might be seeing like, the B flat 7 as the 5th degree of what major scale, and then start to maybe get into diminished theory based around that. And that's really what you're trying to do. You're like, when is B flat the 5th degree of what key? Because once you know that, then you can be like, its relative minor is this. There's the pentatonic scale. I already know 3 notes per string here. I also know now all of the various positions, so I can lay out all the arpeggios. Job's done. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. I wish you all the best in your practice sessions. Start slow, obviously. I played them real simple like. If you can't do the arpeggios, start with the pentatonic scales, then move up to just regular scales, and then work on the triads, and then finally ramp up at the very end to the dominant 7 arpeggios. And Bob's your uncle, and just keep your nose to the grindstone. We'll see you in the next one.